It is a huge line item expense for property owners. So it's really important to make sure that you're managing those assessments every single year. There is an assessment creep. If you don't handle it one year, you continue, that becomes your new base and you continue to get higher and higher.
All right, Jason. So thanks for tuning in. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do. Why should I be interested in property tax protests or tax assessment protests?
Sure. I've been doing property tax consulting for about 15 years. Most of my career has been spent in the complex space. So doing the filing of renditions and the appeals, valuation appeals for business personal property, large manufacturing facilities, equipment, and then the underlying real estate. So primarily industrial real estate. So that's where most of my experience has been. But as of the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years, I've been doing a lot more real estate. So more apartment complexes and retail and things like that. So, why you should be interested in property tax protests? It's a big hot topic here in Texas. It is a huge line item expense for property owners. So it's really important to make sure that you're managing those assessments every single year. There is an assessment creep. If you don't handle it one year, you continue, that becomes your new base and you continue to get higher and higher. So it's important to handle those every single year. And here in Texas, it is an annual process.
Absolutely. I think it sounds like you have a real passion for this. Why do you love this protest process so much?
That's a good question. I actually like it's an interesting business because you have the technical side where we're in our offices and we're doing the valuation piece, and then there's the period of or the time of year where we're working with assessors, and so there's that personal relationship. And so one of the reasons I like it is I get to kind of use both sides of my brain there. I get to do the technical side of things in one part of the year, and then I get to build relationships and work with people. That's one of the things I love the most is getting to know these assessors. We're very active in North Texas, so the DFW area. And so building relationships with those assessors, it's helpful and it makes the process a lot smoother.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I think for people that don't know about me, I'm a commercial real estate attorney, but I'm also a big direct investor. So I have about, 7 or 8 industrial properties, mostly single tenant, net leased. And my experience with tax has always been something of you protest because it's a contingency fee, at least the old model. And I never went so far. I've had clients who litigate and file lawsuits. But I had never done that because for my properties in that kind of like 2 to 5 million range, I just didn't feel like the juice was worth the squeeze because our values were so high and the comps were there. So I guess tell me, at what point should our listeners be seriously looking at building a year-long relationship as opposed to that protest window, which is what I've done, for these smaller properties. I just reach out to you guys and I talk, and full disclosure, I use Ryan LLC, or it's like your former
Mhm.
employer.
Yeah.
But it's a very brief window, and we do engage in some documentation, right? You'll say, hey, what kind of improvements have you done? Give me some photos, like what's kind of going on with your leases, what's the value there. But it's very much a window from the assessment to the protest to a, hey, do you want to take this deal? Yes, and moving on. So where does it transition to where you're working with people year round?
With assessors specifically, it is very cyclical. Actually, it's right about now is kind of a quiet time. So we're pretty quiet from now until really the beginning of the year. As far as talking about documentation for the current year, we work with our clients a lot doing due diligence analyses when they're acquiring new properties. They want to know what their property tax liability is going to be, and so we do a lot of the outlook for them so that they can anticipate what that property tax expense will be. So there's a lot of that in this off season, but as it relates to the current annual assessment, the go time is really January through like July.
Yeah. So when would you recommend that property owners reach out to you and kind of like, I was looking for like a number threshold,
Mhm.
you know, a $5 million multifamily is probably much higher on your active list versus a $5 million single tenant net lease, that they've owned for 5 years or 10 years. So is there like a numerical threshold of value?
Well, as you probably know, there's new legislation here in Texas with the property tax caps. Anything under 5 million, they do cap. at a 20% increase. And so that has changed, it's changed the way it's changed things a bit these last couple of years, but that we anticipate that rolling off next year. So it'll be here for 2026, but we anticipate it rolling off for 2027.
Oh, wow. So they only passed it for one legislative session. It's just
It was a 3-year deal. Yeah. So it was
3 year deal.
yeah, they
Wow.
called it a circuit breaker, and it was meant to be, I think, kind of a test case, but it looks like I don't think that they're going to actually be re-upping that. So we'll still see. We don't know for sure, but that's kind of what we're expecting. But honestly, I think it's probably really helpful for property owners to have, whether it's if they're doing it themselves, that's one thing. But if you have a consultant that's working on it, just to have them looking at it every single year. If there's nothing to do one particular year, then it's not a big deal, right? A lot of this is done on a contingent basis, and that's why a performance fee. We look through the details, we look for opportunities for reduction, and if we can't find anything, then that's okay. There's no bill, right? But at least you have somebody scrubbing the details every single year. So it's what you're looking for a number. Is a threshold as far as like, give me one more sentence on that. What's the threshold that you're looking for as far
Yeah.
as?
I feel like this is a good chat GPT. This is like chat GPT asking me for more clarification. So,
Sorry.
so yeah, I mean, I think, um, as a benchmark, I don't really know if a $10,000 property tax bill really gets you excited to work with me as a function of, 10,000 might still be the highest line item on a 16 unit multifamily. But candidly, they're not going to get a ton of value working with you over working directly and doing it themselves. But
Mm,
if you have a 40 unit multifamily and the tax bill is 40,000, you're like, hey, I can do some work there. I can really help you get that down to 37 or 33,000. And you're like, okay, that's more than the property owner probably has time or the expertise to do it themselves. And I use those as examples because as we were kind of talking about, gross leases and multifamily or maybe developers where they own that property tax, that's a different ball game compared to single tenant net lease properties where either the tenant is in charge of protests or, the owner, I won't say they care less, but they're very much, I'm doing a bigger video about net effective rent and why it's so important. So property owners should care, but there's still going to be a natural tendency to care less if the tenant is responsible, and they're just not going to fight as hard versus the multifamily or the developers that are owning it for several years during development. So that's what I'm looking for. Where do you see more of your customers naturally come in, or where would you recommend that they come in and you can provide value?
sure. Yeah. I appreciate the additional context. That makes good sense. Without the caps, that number changes, right? Anything over like a million, I think we can do some damage on.
Okay.
With the caps in place, it is hard for us to make it worth our time, to be honest, under 5 million. That's what it's really done. And part of that's just changing the way we bill. So sometimes we have to do a flat fee to make it work for anything under 5 million these days. But again, those caps are rolling off. And so anything over a million, I think we typically view as is worth it and we could do some damage with. So
So that's a super low threat. I mean, that's surprising to me. But at a million, are you even getting into residential SFR as Airbnbs? I mean, a million is like
mhm.
an office condo, pretty much. That's
Yeah.
any kind of commercial building.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We don't do residential homes. We do only commercial, but yeah, a million is a pretty low threshold. But again, when you're not talking caps, there's some significant increases there that we can limit on a $1 million. You think a lot of stuff is going up 20, 30, 40% each year. So you think that's several hundred thousand in value. We can do some damage with that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. And I think, does it depend on different counties with their millage rates too? Or do you find yourself more active in individual counties?
There are some counties that are easier to work in for sure. Tax rate wise, they're all pretty similar, unless you're getting into the tertiary markets. You've got some that are like 1.7, 1.8, but for the most part, like DFW in general, the big districts are two, a little 2+. Um, but yeah, there are some jurisdictions. Tarrant's a really good appraisal district to work with. That's where you and I met. They are really great to work with. They're just they're They like to build relationships with other people, with other consultants. They work well with consultants. They understand valuation really well, and they understand our position and what we're trying to accomplish. Some others are a little more difficult. I'd say North Texas is pretty good to work with for the most part, and we love working in the North Texas counties.
Yeah, and I think it's one of these unsung areas of business deployment decision making that a lot of elected officials and different people, they just don't realize that this interaction from a government agency talking to you who has an immediate line to the operations person at your company, when they're making decisions whether to put another plant, or I have clients that are moving warehousing from California to Texas. These are real impacts that put another finger on the scale of like, hey, California is great, Arizona's made, but Texas has been amazing to work with. The consultants, this our existing relationships, um, and I just think it's a concrete example of how governments can get support or mandate from the elected officials, not just budget accounting, because this is a pro business area. And I don't know, I just think it's a representation of how a jurisdiction can be pro business. It's working with them and trying to understand their business. Can we use that little example? Because I was totally eavesdropping on the whole thing, but I love that example. Hypothetically, can you run through, is that common?
The example of what we were doing at Tarrant County, is that what you're?
Yeah, kinda like that split between BPP and the timing and location of inventory versus real property, or
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's all that common actually.
okay.
Happens, right? So and that's why it's important to have these conversations with the assessors, right? They're looking at things from a mass appraisal perspective, but there's always um, unique things about a property that need to be taken into consideration. And so that's where we come in is trying to work through those types of things. Um, yeah, that ended up working out all right. But there was with that particular situation, we went to a hearing and we ended up getting the number that we wanted. But even though we got the number that we wanted, there's some political capital that was lost there, right? And so there was a little bit of like relationship building we had to do with the assessor. I had to do some damage control a little bit because there was a little bit of, you kind of felt it. There was a little bit of push and
Yeah,
shove.
they're losing money. So they don't like to lose that money, even if it's, quote, "the right thing to do." It still stings a little bit, and they're probably just trying to horse trade, because it sounded like your client was kind of high profile. I'm sure the city councilman is aware of their business and trying to encourage more investment. And then this kind of I don't know, they don't feel cheated, but it just feels bad. Eh,
It can. It really can. And that's, again, back to that relationship thing. It was important for us and our firm to make sure that they understood where we were coming from. And so I had meetings with a couple different assessors that were involved in this issue, and I went and sat down with them in person to kind of smooth it out, and we're good now, and it's good. Yeah, it's a perfect example of just where the relationship piece is really important from their perspective and ours. So
Yeah, again, as a self protest person, I don't know if it's maybe my lawyer background and kind of the small values of property. It's kind of a lot. Do you have advice or like three tips for people that, especially if they're under that 5 million and they want to self protest, what would you recommend that they do to get the best outcome?
well, there's a number of levers that we pull. It really depends on the property for the most part, but you're going to either be using a cost approach, there's an income approach, obviously, and then the sales comparison approach, which most people are familiar with. All of those, using a collection of those is always good. If you have multiple data points that kind of point to a similar number, that's always a good thing. The one thing that's different here in Texas is they prioritize equity. So like and that's why you see all these assessors trying to bump these values up continually. And you're seeing like 20, 30, 40% bumps. They're consistently trying to get values up to market value, but really arguably values aren't there. Assessments aren't at market value. So there's an equity play here. And you can't be, as a business owner, they pride themselves on or prioritize you being assessed very similar to your neighbors and your peers with similar properties. And so that's an equity play. That's what we call equal and uniform. And so that's a big lever to pull. So even though your income approach might come at, let's just pull a number out, 5 million, your peers, if you're looking at assessments across the board, might be 4.5. And so that's why the assessor might bump it up to 5 million, and consultants or property owners are able to still get that reduced lower because you want to be equal with your peers.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I realize it in hindsight when you say that, because that's one of the check boxes of why do you think the value is wrong? And I usually just say, like, I just don't think it's accurate. It's not representative, whatever. But then there's a separate checkbox, unequal. And I'm just like, well, I don't care about equity. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Well, so here's
capitalism.
like an example. Like you could have, and this is why, like if you purchase a building, let's say you purchased one, but you had a new purchase that year for 20 million, that you still, and they assess you at 20 million, there's still an opportunity to get that reduced. Like if your peers are all at 15 million, they'll take that. If you can support the argument, I mean, they'll give you some pushback for sure. You might have to have a hearing on it, but if you have good data to support it, that is a valid argument, even though you paid 20 for it.
And you admit that you overpaid, because I've done that too. I bought something within the last 12 months and they were like, do you have your settlement statement? Did you pay less than this? And I was like, no, I don't have it with me. And they're like, okay, well, you bought it. And I said, yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that I overpaid for something. The value today is less than I paid. And that's what I kept the argument. And it was a little bit hard for me to make, but I just used my lawyer brain and tried to be very strict. I was like, because I was the owner, and that's like where there's a little disconnect. You can easily throw your client under the bus by, well, they overpaid. The value is 15. The value is 15. I don't care what the settlement is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Just talking with you, I could tell you'd probably be pretty good in the hearings. Yeah, we would rather not share the closing statement if we don't have to.
yeah.
We're honest. Sometimes our clients just say, like, under no circumstance can you share this. And that's what we'll tell them. Like, hey, we have it. We know what it was sold for, but we can't tell you. I'm sorry. But it doesn't matter. One sale is not representative of market, right? Because there's always
That's
things that lead you to overpaying. And so even though we paid this is where equal and uniform is, and this is what we're going for. And so that's the argument we make. We use it a lot. And it's not one of the three valuation approaches. It's separate, but it is a leverageable.
and that's true in all North Texas counties, not just
That's all of Texas. Yeah.
all of Texas. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but are you familiar with these notices? These are from the county assessor.
Yes.
It's hilarious. So I collect a lot of these for my clients. This one is actually Comal, so it's not big city, but I have Dallas, Tarrant, Colin, Grayson, and it's really funny just because they say, "Was this purchased from a relative? How did you discover this property?" Craigslist. They have a checkbox for Craigslist. Did it include any personal property? What's your value of the personal property? Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. And this one is pretty tame. It doesn't put pressure, but I have videos where I have other ones and they want a signature. They have big statutory references, and the statutory references are dumb. They're just like the establishment of appraisal districts, but they're trying to intimidate people to make it look like an official form. I mean, so okay, long story short, have you had stories of this where somebody filled this out and then they trot it out at the hearing, or they really like blast your client and maybe you're unaware of it? Or did they tell you ahead of time, hey, I filled it out, I told them what I paid, and you have damage control to kind of say, well, that's not accurate? Or
Well, that's a great question. We come across those all the time. I don't have a situation where they filled it out and we've had to go do damage control, but we get asked all the time, should I fill this out?
point them to my YouTube videos, because
I will.
I have every single county, and I always end it. I do the end where I just ball it up and I throw it in the trash.
That's
But
what we
people are
do.
scared. People ask me when they get those all the time too, and I have a copy and paste auto response, but it's like they're scared, and they ask me, I'm their lawyer, like, do I have to fill this out? And then can I lie? Can I put 300? I'm like, no, they're not going to lower their price just because you put in some document, and there's no reason to lie, misrepresent to the appraisal district. Just throw it away. You don't have a duty to fill it out. But it's super interesting how, what I get the sense from you is like these assessors, they almost treat it like their own little business unit. which is interesting on a politics or capitalism aside. They are almost accountable because they have this revenue and cost thing. They're a mini business unit that they have to justify their expansion, justify their budget. And then they're trying these types of things. They do these little fishing experiments because, they can. I don't see the Parks and Recreation Department being like sending out these flyers trying to fish for information.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what they have to treat like. There's another like kind of wrinkle here. They are held to a standard as well. So the comptroller can come in. They come in, I believe it's every 3 years, but each assessor or each county has to be a certain percentage of actual market value, and so they go and undergo audits themselves, and so
From the
they
state,
yeah from the
state
state.
level. Okay.
So yeah, they're under pressure themselves to keep things at a certain level.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one other question that I want to talk about was some of these property tax abatement agreements. Have you worked with interpretation of what the city grants and then the assessor maybe doesn't interpret it the same way? Or if there's a legal fight, I guess, of you know, you guys didn't create the 100 jobs you were supposed to, so you're not eligible. And then they say, no, it's supposed to be a pro rata, or there's a threshold. If we do above 50, it's pro rata per FTE or something. And you're arguing with the assessor. It's like, hey, we met this. We're at clearly 60 employees. We trigger the pro rata, not a nothing break. Have you dealt with anything like that or economic incentive plans?
Not in that not in that vein, but we do work with property tax abatements. Typically, when we get our piece of it, the clients already have an abatement in place that they've worked together with the different jurisdictions. I mean, our piece of it is reviewing the agreement and then making sure that it's approved. If it's approved, that it's approved in the right amounts and that it aligns with the agreement. We don't do a whole lot with, actually, we don't do anything with trying to get abatements, and we don't do anything with trying to get them approved. That's a lot of internal conversations that companies have, right? Whether they're meeting certain thresholds, certain hiring thresholds, and whatnot. I'm gonna imagine you deal a decent amount with that, right?
I wish I knew more about it. The short answer is yes. I feel like the last 5 years or even before that, Texas was really aggressive, both at a state and a local level in trying to attract all these businesses. But beyond that initial push, when they had tons of budget, tons of excitement, and the costs in Texas were actually lower, my clients are kind of too small. They might be doing 25, 50 millions. It's not enough to get them excited because the only budget now is just for big, big companies. They want Goldman Sachs to relocate. They want, after the Toyota thing, they want like huge divisions of Allstate insurance to move over. And the smaller companies, I don't know. I feel like it's proven out maybe
Yeah.
how good North Texas is. And so I don't see government being as popular. We have some people that we work with, and I point my clients and they just say, well, you can get this type of local sales tax abatement. And they're like, that's not really a lot. That's like 50,000 a year. How about
Hmm.
property taxes? And they're like, no, they're not putting anything on the table for 50 jobs.
Right.
Just they're not interested. And they're still doing well and the vacancies are low. So I think they're getting that economic development they're happy with.
That makes good sense.
Well, what about any bold predictions for the future? I mean, my channel is really focused on it is industrial investors. Industrial outdoor storage is a hot play. I've seen a lot more allocation towards land. It's a little more unassailable. But what do you see as the future for industrial property taxes in North Texas?
Yeah, I actually did had a talk that we did at a taxation conference just really several months ago. This was last year. So man, we're already in August. It was last year, last September. It's almost a year ago. But the topic was on industrial real estate, and so as a part of that, we looked at Texas specifically, and this North Texas area is a hot spot for industrial, and so these appraisal districts are latching onto that, and that's why you see such large increases on industrial properties in particular. But we anticipate it being really strong in North Texas specifically over the next couple of years. And we, with that, expect quite a few increases as well. So,
So just going up, and as a property owner, as an investor, can they engage you to get an estimate of what they think their property taxes will reset to be or at the next year?
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually do that. A lot of firms do that for free, but we do that just as a service. A lot of times we use it as a marketing tool, right? We'll help
Right.
you with this particular, you know, you're looking at this acquisition. We'll help you with the due diligence analysis, and hopefully you'll use us for your property taxes and let us, put our money where our mouth is there.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think that because that 5 million cap was so temporary, I think we're going to be right back in the thick of it where you're saying anybody over $1 million, you've got to reach out and you've got to keep it down. I'm curious, do you have any type of modeling where you can show the delta between not letting a 5 to 7% to 10% assessed value creep up, especially because of the compounding? And after 5 years, what that new tax rate is compared to if it was going at 5 to 7 to 10%, but you knocked it down to 2 to 3, minimizing that compounding after 5 years, what the delta in assessed value is. I think AI is at the point where it is game changer for this type of business. And for what I mean is like as a lawyer, I'm just paper. I'm just I'm very text heavy. So I don't need to do drawings. I don't need to interpret charts. Relationships, yes, but I think I could be a better lawyer by spending less time in paper and more time building relationships. Do you guys see AI in that same vein, or are you using it?
Yeah, well, for property taxes, we are using it. I use ChatGPT a lot for just emails, and I have enough experience with it to recognize how powerful that tool is, and I know that there's a myriad of other different use cases for it that we haven't even that we're just scratching the surface on it. But we have played around with it, and we have even with valuation, like we've actually given it parameters, like, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is the value we think. What do you think? And it'll come out and it'll just say, hey, yeah, we think you're right on, and it'll say, hey, if you're doing a hearing, let us. We'll create your your top line items that you need to share with the assessor, and it'll
Okay,
give.
so creating presentations, creating like a six page slide deck,
Yeah,
organizing all of your data and the data that it has access to.
yeah, absolutely. And we've recognized some errors or things that we were like, yeah, I don't know that I would actually do that, but it gives a pretty good basis to run off of. So we've used it for that. We're actually using it. One of our employees is using it to help build software to help make our processes more efficient. So he's used ChatGPT specifically for help building that software out. So yeah, we've been using it. It's a powerful tool. I'm actually interested in seeing kind of how it pans out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, because that's what I think for the small guys, or I don't know if you're small, but this level, not at Ryan or Weaver type size.
Hmm.
We have the ability to really punch above our weight. And, I've got a team of 5, but it's like we can be competing at a level of a firm of 50 people because they were doing manual process and we just instantly do things that even if it takes 15 minutes, it takes 30 minutes, we can do it instantly.
Hmm.
It's incredible for leveraging the people that you do have and making them 10 times as efficient. It's not perfect, especially for law. We're still putting eyes on everything. It's not like I'm going to have ChatGPT create a document and I just send it out. But instead of taking 15 minutes, 30 minutes to look up create the document, I just skim it and send it out. And like you said, I'm still making little corrections, but they're mostly stylistic. It does things that are technically correct, but I'm like stylistically it looks a little bit off.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very powerful, and we're doing the same types of things. We're trying to create deficiencies that allow us to do a lot of work without a whole staff of people. Property tax it specifically is very administrative intensive, right? So you've got a lot of notices, a lot of tax bills you're pulling down, and so we're trying to streamline a lot of those processes, and AI has been pretty helpful with.
Yeah, because do you OCR all of your notices for certain clients, and then you can do like even like a RAG model and say, what was the assessed rate for this property on this parcel ID on this date, and it will give you an answer with the citation, so you can double check it really fast, faster than you like scrolling through your own folders and trying to
Right.
look it up.
Yeah. Yeah. doing everything electronically as much as possible for that reason. We have a system that scrapes information off bills and off assessment notices and
Gotcha.
creates a template for us that we can upload into databases and things like that. We're
Yeah,
dealing with
that's
thousands of paper mail sometimes, and so we're trying to automate that as much as possible.
no, I think that's really the future is getting rid of folders and labeling documents because that's designed for a human to be sifting through. But the AI just needs the text. And so if I can route it from my email to just be searching my email constantly. If it's not in my email, then it doesn't exist. But that's to me the real power. That's what I want. I want to be able to look up, hey, what was the last check I got from, 3900 Beach LLC? And it's going to say, I think the last check you got is here. It's in a folder called img2321.jpg, but it doesn't matter. The AI can just find it and give me the answer with a reference to the image, and I don't need to create folders anymore. I don't need to relabel things because the data is just on the image, the file itself.
I'd like to know a little bit more about how you do that. That's actually that's
Yeah.
beyond what we're doing. So I'd love to know how to do that.
That's like, yeah, the difference between a agentic or RAG database. So I'm taking one of my good friends made like an AI for commercial real estate. I don't know if you've heard of adventures in CRE.com. They do like modeling, but now they have a new course called AI.edge, and it's specifically for commercial real estate practitioners to be able to underwrite, to send out offers, and basically organize our own commercial real estate data. So rent rolls, leases, property tax notices, P&Ls, and you're able to ask it questions and it just gives you answers, right? It's like a person.
Absolutely. That is really cool.
Yeah. But it's really cool because, however you talk about a client to your partner, you say, like, oh, one of Ron's properties. And like, "Yeah, which one? Oh, it's that one that he has in Dallas, that one property he has in Dallas." That's all you need to say for the AI to know that it says, I think you're talking about this address and this parcel ID. And so it gives you the assumption. I don't know. I wish I could pull it up. But yesterday I was playing with ChatGPT and I gave a reference like that. And it said, I'm assuming you're talking about this. And it gave the rest of the answer. And it was correct.
I love it. That's really cool. I'd love to chat more about the AI stuff and
Yeah,
how.
I'm trying to go in 2 feet and make like AI native, like, the way the internet was, the way, even telephones and email. There were lawyers that said, yeah, email's great, but I still have to send out paper notices because the agreement requires paper. So I'm still going to do paper and
Mhm,
have a paper file. And you're like, well, that's cool, but what are you going to do when all the contracts allow DocuSign? What are you going to do when all the contracts allow email notice?
mhm.
You're going to be behind because your workflow is going to be printing paper, mailing paper, and it's just so unnecessary cost and time, which are essentially the same thing, to mail out paper when an email notice is sufficient. And I think AI is going to move that way too, where lawyers are going to communicate in an AI way that's not aesthetically easy to read, but the AI will be able to parse it super clear. So it's like landlord colon blah blah blah, and then comma tenant colon, but you know what I'm saying, and it's hard to read that. We don't have white space, but you could do a whole lease in one text file that's like 50 kilobytes, right, and not like a 30 megabyte PDF.
Mhm.
So when AI can scrape those agreements just with a text file, and it's, could you read it? Yeah, but its formatting is for AI, not for eyes. Because I'm just going to ask it. I'll be like, "Hey, who's the tenant on this lease?" And they'll be like, "AI will tell you."
That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but that makes sense. Yeah, that is super cool. I love that. I love
Ah,
the prospects for it, for the use case.
eventually. I
Yeah,
mean, I feel like people said this about the internet. They're like, "You're going to be able to just go on, find something, hire somebody, and pay them money, and they're going to do work all without picking up a phone." And people are like, "No way! I'm not going to hire some expensive lawyer, and how could I trust Jason?" And people are like, "Dude, I read a couple Google reviews. I'm hiring Jason." It's that
it's wild. Yeah, how much things have changed since
the
then.
trust. Yeah,
Yeah,
people much more trust over the internet. Um,
yeah, that's super cool.
Well, thanks again, Jason, for hopping on. I mean, I think we found a way to make property tax consulting interesting. I know you love it. It's important. I mean, I love money. I love saving money. So that's what's going to be the key takeaway for everybody watching is how to save money on your taxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, it's good chatting. I'll put your website and email down below if people want to reach out to you. Is email the best way or?
Yeah, email's just fine, and we're happy to take any questions, help anyone out that needs it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time.